Welcome to the China Sourcing Academy course, where we dissect the biggest issues facing buyers sourcing direct from China, with tips to save you time, money, and fast-tracking your business. With your hosts, Mike Bellamy and Neil O'Connor.
If you ask me, what are the big tactics of buyers? Audits, they have many suppliers, cost leadership measure, specialist purchasing managers, buyer power. Let me talk about the buyer power and information sharing. One great story, when I was talking to Apple and I asked them, is there any supplier that doesn't share information with you in the areas that you want to have information on? And they said, no, we know everything because we have the power. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, so you expect that with Apple. But when I talked to some of the other smartphone manufacturers, they said, yeah, we normally have full transparency with the China suppliers, Taiwanese, but much less Korean, much less Japanese. And so this is why it surprised me when I spoke to Apple and they said, oh, we can get information from the Koreans and the Japanese. And I'm thinking, wow, how do you do that? And then the person from Apple said, well, it's like this, Neil. In our contracts with suppliers, we dictate the materials they buy. They have to buy from the suppliers we tell them to buy from. So we control the inputs, we see the outputs, we can work out the yield. And the yield is probably the big thing that buyers want to know from the suppliers. Okay? And let me give you a trick question that I always like to ask in this area. When it comes to talking about yield, remember yield, if you talk to a lot of factory owners and those who run factories, if you know, no factory has a yield of 100%. That means zero defect. That means 0, 0, 0, perfect quality, right? Like that's utopia, right? Doesn't happen. 90%, 95%, possible in some processes. Like, of course, they're pushing it up, trying to get as high as possible. Perfect, right? So this is why buyers want to know the yield of suppliers, because they want to know how good the supplier is. Because Apple, when it's searching for suppliers, it's looking for those with special technology. And about less than a decade ago, they found a supplier in China, and it had this special touchscreen technology that when you touch it with your finger, it had amazing responsiveness. And Apple thought, wow, that's a good idea. That would be perfect for a touchpad. And that supplier became the supplier of the touchpad technology on the Mac. You know what I'm talking about. And so how did the discussion go? This supplier only had an 8% yield at that time. 8%! What does an 8% yield mean? 92% rubbish. 92%. All right? You can't survive on that. So what did Apple do? Invest 150 million US with the supplier to move its yield up to acceptable 70, 80%. Apple will do that. Why? Because they want the technology. Other suppliers, they'll say to the supplier, you want to be approved with us? You invest first, then we will decide. We will not guarantee. Okay? But if it's a technology they want, they'll invest to help the supplier. The big challenge for a lot of the suppliers that are working with these big buyers, guess what, is the volume. A lot of Chinese suppliers are very capable. They have the technology, but they have the design, engineering technology, but they don't always have the process technology. That is, the technology to make millions of units every month. That's a big challenge for a lot of suppliers. All right, another major smartphone manufacturer had a problem with a Chinese supplier. That exact problem, they found the supplier had this perfect technology for the camera because they wanted the new latest camera, the megapixel camera to go in their smartphone. You all have that in your smartphone, right? Do you all take photos with your smartphone? You know what I'm talking about. So they found a supplier that had this new technology, ultra pixel technology, that was better than any other technology on the market. The problem was that supplier could not make the millions of units that this smartphone manufacturer wanted every month. So what did the smartphone manufacturer do? It sent 700, not 7, not 70, 700 of its engineers, production people, to that supplier's factory to give it that process capability to make those units, right? So what am I saying? There are a lot of diamonds in the rough in China. The big buyers, like Apple, like Samsung, like HTC, they find them, okay? But often when they find the supplier has, they've got that technology, but they don't have that process technology. They could design it and it looks good in a prototype, but they don't have the capability to make millions of it. And so the great thing about a lot of these smartphone manufacturers, not just Apple, they have worked a lot with these suppliers to make the millions necessary. You know? That's a great combination where buyers actually work with the suppliers. And so as I said earlier, I did say earlier that, you know, Apple screws the suppliers and make no money. Apple's also done a lot of great things in China in the transfer of technology, and a lot of it's process technology. How do you make millions of these every month?